Welcome to the Credit Show on KDON. I'm Harry Jacobs. Credit Restoration of Nevada is our company. Saturday mornings, 8 to 9 here on KDON. If you're a podcast person, there are a couple places you can catch us. The Podbean app, Podbean, or in iTunes, in their podcast app, under Credit Restoration of Nevada, in both places. Been here about a dozen years doing this radio show, week in and week out. Happy to talk about credit any chance that I get the opportunity to do that. I'm going to give you some ways to reach us in just a minute on the web, through a telephone call or text. Hang tight. It's always free for us initially to look at your credit, that analysis. If you're someone that listens to the show, or even if you're brand new, this show is about credit restoration, all things credit. Initially, everything we do is free. That analysis, we give you a report after we've analyzed your credit, basically a copy of our work product. It tells us everything that's going on with your credit, the good and the bad. All of it's important because it helps to make up your credit score. There are a lot of things that go into making up a credit score. I'll actually probably spend some time in today's show talking about credit scores and the makeup of scores. Not a bad idea. We do these net meetings on our computers. We were doing it before COVID. Thank goodness when that happened. We were ready to rock and roll. But you don't ever have to leave your home if you don't want to. You can jump on your computer. I'll send you a link. You can actually jump into my computer and my computer screen, and I can walk you through your credit report item by item. The analysis, this all happens in real time. It's a pretty nifty system. The website is easy. CR, like Credit Restoration, crnevada.com. There's a bunch of resources there, including links to get your credit report and set up a meeting with me if you'd like. Whatever you need. Pricing, videos, there's a bunch of stuff there. So check that out, crnevada.com. And if you'd rather talk to someone or just shoot us a text and get the info you need, you can do that as well. 702-778-2000. 702-778-2000. Text the word credit. We'll know you heard the radio show or the podcast, and we'll ask you a few questions. We're going to ask you your first and last name and your email address. I want to just be able to get an email out to you as soon as I can. That'll have a link in there to get your credit report, and there'll be one as well for us to set up an appointment if you'd like to do that. So let's get off to the races here. I had someone who is a frequent listener of the show calling this week, who had an issue with a debt collector. Let's just call him an unscrupulous debt collector. They ended up calling his house and talking to a 16-year-old child in that house. And they were making repeated calls to family members and other places, work, et cetera, et cetera. Just, these debt collection agencies do what's called skip trace. So they run a report on you, and they find out where you live and who your known associates are and phone numbers associated with these people. And they just start smiling and dialing, looking to track you down, telling people that they're calling on personal business, but they're looking for you. Doesn't sound good when someone calls looking for someone you know, saying they're calling about personal business. It's always a sign of a debt collector. So at one point in time, this person that is a listener of the show that called us said to these folks at the collection agency that he wanted the debt validated. He wanted them to, I don't think he used the word validate, but he said, I need you to prove that debt's mine. Either way, it's okay. It's something he heard me talking about on the show. And the debt collector actually said to him, you know that you owe the money, just pay the money and I'll be on my way. And that, of course, is a violation. Once someone says the debt needs to be validated, or they need to provide proof that the debt is owed in their name, any attempt to collect that debt must cease until they provide a letter By the way, the collection agency at that point's got 5 days to send a letter out to the consumer. Now, at that point, you should probably give them your address so you get that letter and you figure out what it's going to be. Don't be secretive. Don't worry that it's going to restart the debt. There's a lot of information that's just BS that's out there about old debts. Don't fall for any of that. If you've got a question about what to say and how to say it, and what information to give and what not to give, that's something you want to pick up the phone and ask me about for sure. But the reality here is that this person said to them, I need you to prove that I owe the debt. And then, he hung up the phone, and the collection agency called him back and called him repeatedly. This apparently happened over the course of 60 days. I'm not sure why it took him so long to call me. But what he did in the meantime was he called other places. He called the house again and spoke, as I mentioned, to a 16-year-old family member. He also called friends and other family that they could find through the skip trace report. All of this is illegal. Once he told them that he needed the debt validated, any attempt to collect on that debt needs to be stopped. Just plain stop. Now, what we did find out, and here's where it gets sketchy. This is one of these collection agencies that's, unscrupulous, obviously. They're behaving in a way that they shouldn't. But oftentimes, these companies are not legitimate companies. Well, they may have a business account. They may have a bank account. They may have some sort of business license. But they don't follow the law. The majority, and I don't know why this is, I've talked about this before, but the majority of these companies, these debt collection agencies that are unscrupulous, that are breaking the law, they're based around the Buffalo, New York area. I don't know why that is, but there is a group of these companies that exists that are all in that neck of the woods. Who knows? Maybe it's got something to do with the sun not shining from Halloween to Mother's Day. I don't know what it does to people. But they're breaking the law. Doesn't matter where they are, honestly, but the reality is that, this is one of those things where it's difficult to stop. If the company's legitimate and they're licensed in Nevada to collect debts, that's one thing. And that piece of it, by the way, is important. The Nevada Financial Institutions Division has a database of foreign collection agencies, meaning collection agencies that are not based here in Nevada, that have to register in order to collect money. So as an example, let's say that this company, which turns out it was a company that was located in Buffalo and they were unscrupulous, but let's say that company is legitimate and they're collecting or attempting to collect a debt on you and you're here in Southern Nevada or Northern, doesn't matter where you are. But they're collecting on a debt from a consumer in Nevada before they even make a phone call or do anything. What they have to do is they have to register with the Nevada Financial Institutions Division so that they know that there's a foreign entity operating in our state. And this company did not do that. That's one of the first things we look at when we get a phone call from someone on an issue like this. What name did they give you? What's the name of the company? You write down the name and you say, give me a couple minutes, let me get back to you. We go into that database and look for foreign collection agencies. And, they're not there. We punch the number into Google. We do a bunch of different things. This company showed up nowhere other than some scammer list on Google. Actually, several scammer lists on Google. So what do you do in this case? The reality is you can't do anything. You can't stop those phone calls. You can't find these companies. Right? They end up changing their name. They end up not answering the phone. They end up, just being a nuisance. And New York won't shut them down. And Nevada can't find anyone to go after them. We've sent Jamie Cogburn and Eric Fox after some of these companies. You just can't track them down. We've had instances where folks like Jamie and Eric and Kevin Hernandez and other lawyers have sued these companies, have won, but no one can track them down. It just doesn't happen. They're into the ether. They're gone. They've set up another entity and they're off to screw someone else, attempt to screw someone else. You know, these companies often, even when they're not breaking the law, there are companies out there that are debt buyers. And by the way, I don't have a thing against debt collectors. I understand that debt collectors have a job to do. This is not an anti-debt collector show. This is just a show that wants to make you aware of the rules they need to follow. Right? That's one of the things I do on this show. We have plenty of local collection agencies, here in town, +4 and Allied and Quantum and Clark County Collections, all these companies that follow the law. Right? There are never issues with those companies. But these other companies, the unscrupulous ones, right, that are just scammers, that's an issue. But there are companies that go out and attempt to collect on you. Even some of the legitimate ones will sometimes come up with strategies to get you to pay. They'll set fake deadlines. That's a huge technique for them. And we have talked about that on this show, various strategies that they'll use. They have to be careful because of what's known as the FDCPA, the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So they have to be careful about certain things that they say. One of the things you'll hear them say is they'll tell you that they're going to mark you as a refusal to pay. This, of course, means nothing. Oh, we're going to set a deadline for you, which means nothing. The reality is that with virtually all deals, time is your friend on debts. The longer something goes, the better the deal you can make. They'll tell you things that are close to the limit, but not over the line. We're going to forward this to our legal department. Okay, go ahead and forward it. Now, does that mean you're going to get sued? No. Does that mean they're actually going to send it to a lawyer or their legal department? No. That's an attempt to make you pay the debt. So there's a fine line. Now, if they were to tell you, listen, we're going to sue you, we're going to garnish your wages, we're going to make you pay this debt one way or another, that's a threat. And they can't do that. That's where the line is. They can't do something that is not going to be something that they're actually going to do. I know I didn't say that correctly, but they can't make those threats to you. That's what's important in this. If you've got a question about a debt collector, I want you to pick up the phone, 702-778-2000. This is The Credit Show. It's KDON. We're back on The Credit Show on KDON. Saturday mornings, 8 to 9 on KDON. Podcast, if you're a podcast person, you can find us there. I think more than 50 shows are there. If you go into the Apple Podcasts app, just punch in Credit Restoration of Nevada. I spent that last segment talking about debt collectors. I'll get back into it for just a minute. In just a minute. I want to let you know how you can reach us. It's important. A lot of times people will say, you talk about this and you talk about that and you get my attention, but I don't always hear how to get a hold of you. So I'll give you that information here in just a second. But what we always do is we always talk to you initially for free. So if you've got a problem, don't think to yourself, well, I can't afford for them to help me. Right? I don't have any money to do that. It doesn't cost you a thing to pick up the phone and say, hey, listen, I need your help. I need your advice on something. Can you help me? The answer is always going to be yes. If there are things you can do yourself, I'm going to send you on your way. If you want us to help you, I'm happy to assist you and make the cost something reasonable for you. Pretty simple process to reach us. The website, CR Nevada, like credit restoration, crnevada.com. If you want to pick up the phone and call us and either talk to someone in the office, by the way, there's someone in the office now. It doesn't matter when you're hearing this show, there's someone available around the clock. You can call us or you can text us. Phone number is 702-778-2000. 702-778-2000. Anytime you need us, there's someone there. And by the way, we are text friendly, so if you want to use that phone number, that's 778-2000, just text the word credit. We'll respond to you. We're always going to ask you your name, your first and last name, your email address. Just want to be able to get you a letter out that, an email with a link to get your credit report. We'll get that done. We'll get it analyzed, and we'll hop on the phone. We'll set an appointment. You will get a link in your email, by the way, to set up a meeting with me. My scheduled calendar is public, and we'll reach out to you and get you the help that you need. It's pretty easy. So back to debt collectors for just a minute, and then I'll move on to other things. It's one of those things where there's a fine line with what they can do. The thing that happens a lot is they'll contact a third party. I mentioned that in the last segment. And the third party meaning it's not them and it's not you, it's another party, meaning a family member or a friend, an ex-wife, an ex-husband, someone like that. Right? That's common. That happens a lot. It's one of the most common things. And any of those people that they contact, all they have to do is say, listen, I have no idea how to get a hold of this person, and then hang up the phone, and that's it. And by the way, they're not supposed to make any phone calls anymore to that person. You can also stop them by calling them saying, I don't want any more phone calls. And any phone calls to anyone at that point must cease. It's always better to write them a letter, memorialize that. It can be simple. You don't have to be some wordsmith. You can just, write them a letter and say, I don't wish to be contacted for whatever reason you're calling me. Do not attempt to collect any debt that you have by reaching me or anyone associated with me on the telephone. And the other thing that's really important, is they can't make false statements that their attorneys or law offices, or that even that you've committed a crime, or they're taking you to court, or they're planning to garnish your wages and just take your money either way. I think it's important that you know what to say to those folks when they call, if they call. And the most important thing is to get that debt validated. That's all. It's a simple thing. Prove that the debt is mine. Send me a letter. That's all. The mortgage market's a little screwy with interest rates. The housing market's a little screwy. This is the time. I get a number of calls. I get, a handful of calls every week from folks that need us. And we'll often, we'll go through the process of getting their report, and I will get your report. If you've gone through the steps, if we've done this properly before we have our scheduled phone call, I'll have a chance to look at your credit report, and I'll know what you're up to. And the first thing that I do is I always look at inquiries. I always look to see where you've been and what you're looking to do before anything else in the credit report. So when someone calls, I'll often say, well, I saw that you applied for a mortgage 3 days ago, and obviously you were declined. There was some sort of an issue. And then I'll go through the analysis of the credit report. Often I'll see that someone was car shopping, or looking for a credit card. There was a problem, and they realized they needed a call. I think, to me, if you're looking to do something, you need to make sure your credit is ready for you to do it. You don't want an ugly surprise. Listen, even people with good credit get ugly surprises. It's happened to all of us. It's happened to me. It's a simple thing to do, to either A, go online to all three credit bureaus, or to go to Identity IQ and sign up and get your credit report and look at it and make sure everything looks okay. But if you're someone that's confused by what you see on the credit report and it doesn't all make sense, That is exactly where we come in. And by the way, we come in for free at that point. The analysis of your credit, I say this all the time, every show, a couple times a show, the analysis of your credit happens for free and in real time. Meaning you call us and you want some help, if you're willing to go get your credit report and follow the link we send you, we'll get your report analyzed immediately and we will tell you what's going on and why maybe you got declined. Or if you're thinking about doing something before you do it, you may want to fix the following things. It's like tuning up the car. You used to, use the story a bunch of times over the years that I've been doing this show that, when I was a kid, we had, my father was an international harvester guy with his vehicles. He had the international scouts, Scout 1, Scout 2, had the travel all. It was their version of the Suburban. And, before we'd go on some family trip, he'd have the travel all or the Scout pulled down into the garage and his tools out, and he'd be changing the plugs and dumping the oil and checking the transfer case and, doing everything he needed to do because he didn't want to get on the road and have some sort of an ugly surprise. And the same thing goes with credit. You don't want to get to the place where you're walking into a car dealership or you're going to meet with a mortgage person and you don't know what's going on. You don't want surprises. You want to walk in there with the confidence of knowing your credit score is as high as it should be. And that there's nothing that needs attention and there's nothing that needs to be fixed. That's important. So let us do that. And we can do it, again, at no cost. If you've got some things that need adjusting, let's talk about whether you should do it or we should do it. A lot of times when people come to us, they come to us because they're at the end of their rope. They're pissed off that, they can't seem to get things fixed. They can't move the meter, whatever it is. If you're declined, and they've continued to be declined, they pick up the phone. We've got a huge volume of folks that come to us after they've been declined. When you look at the statistics, I don't know where they are now. This number's a couple years old. I got to pick up the phone and call a couple of my mortgage guys. But in the last couple of years, those statistics were, 40% of mortgage applications being declined. Depending upon, the lender, it can be half of them. They may have to make a conditional approval. And that's when you're approved, but there are certain conditions under which you're approved. They revolve around something to do with your credit, right? This collection's got to be paid. That collection's got to be paid. We need a letter of explanation about why this happened and what this was about, right? You had this happen in your past. Why did it happen? Just have to write a simple letter in that case. But, whatever it is, this is the importance of credit. This is why I say, your credit is like your adult report card. We don't spend any time talking to our kids about credit. We tell them it's important to pay their bills. It's important to have good credit. But why? Your adult life, the way that people will gauge you, let's be true. Let's be real. It is a statement on character in a lot of ways, for better or worse. How you manage your debts. It's important. It is a character issue. When you listen, if one of your friends needed something, and you had a couple of, you got a handful of different friends. You probably have one or two friends where you go, that guy pays his bills on time, and whatever I lend him, whatever I do for him, it's going to be dealt with immediately. And then we've all got friends that are just, I'm not giving him anything that I'm not prepared to lose. And that's the perspective you have to go into it with in terms of these people a lot. If you're going to loan someone money. I don't ever give anyone money that I'm not prepared to not get back. That's just a fact. And the credit reporting agencies are set up to let lenders know whether you're someone that they could lend money to and get the money back or not get the money back. That's what that is. That's exactly what that is. So that's why it's important to look at your credit. So many things depend on it. Getting a job, people, especially in this town, people are going to look at your credit. Auto insurance, buying a car, buying a house. Want to put a water softener in the house, want to finance it, credit. Solar on the house, want to finance it, credit. Whatever it is. And why use your own money? The beauty of having good credit is you can buy things with other people's money and make sure the cost of that money is low. Why use your money if you can use someone else's? I'll talk about cost of money in a minute. I think actually now I'll do that in the next segment. I wasn't planning on it, but we'll talk about cost of money in a minute. But in the meantime, this is the Credit Show on KDON. We're back on the Credit Show on KDON. Find us in the iTunes podcast app. If you're hearing something that you want to hear again, just punch in Credit Restoration of Nevada. We are here every Saturday from 8 to 9 and a bunch of times throughout the weekend on KDON as well. It's easy to reach us. I'm going to tell you how to do that in a second. Give you the phone number, give you the website, all that information. As I say, every show, multiple times a show. I've done it already now a couple times. The analysis of your credit happens in real time, and it's free. You want us just to look at your credit. We're happy to do that at no cost to you. Simple process. Let us help you out. But you've got to reach out to us. We can't obviously call you. We don't know who you are yet. So go to the website, crnevada.com. CR like credit restoration. Nevada.com. Or pick up the phone and call us. 702-778-2000. 702-778-2000. Just punch in the word credit. We'll ask your first and last name. We'll ask your email address. I'll send an email out to you right away, a link to get your credit report, a link to set up an appointment. By the way, you can do those things on the website as well. That's crnevada.com. Get a credit report, set up an appointment. Anything you need is right there. In the last segment, I was talking about the importance of credit. Listen, it's a common theme on this show. It's why I'm here. And I had said, your credit is like your adult report card, and it's so important if you want to do things in life to have good credit. If you're not someone who's got a lot of cash and you need credit, you need to be able to get things on credit. You manage it properly. And it's one of those things that you want to just make sure you're on top of. But I started talking about the cost of money in any deal and the importance of that. And what I mean about that is that when you borrow money, you're paying interest. And it's important that you know when you're borrowing money. And I don't know that a lot of people really do this. There's a way that you can calculate, what you are paying in interest, obviously, in any deal, right? When you look at a car note, when you're in the finance office, it'll be broken down for you. You can see what the total of monthly payments are going to be, and add those payments up and see what your interest rate. You'll see total interest charged. But it's important to keep that cost as low as possible. Right? There are deals where you're paying 20%, 25%, 29% with down payment if you've got bad credit. you can end up paying, a significant amount more for a car. You buy a car for $10,000. You can end up paying, $4,000, $5,000 in interest, and then if you look at the down payment, you're financing a small amount and just getting screwed in terms of what you're paying if you've got bad credit. The goal is always to use someone else's money. I'll give you, my example. I've talked about this before. I have a Harley Davidson Street Glide. Bought it a few years ago. And at the time I bought it, I decided to go with financing because Harley was offering 0.99%. So they're under 1%. So I'm paying, no interest to use Harley Davidson money to buy the $30,000 Street Glide. And that to me is using credit wisely. Now, if my credit was poor and I had to pay 15% interest or 16% interest or something outrageous, or Harley wouldn't even do it and they sent me to some second chance financing company and you're paying 17 or 18 or something ridiculous, I would have said no. No, why would I do that? Why would I pay 20% over what that bike is worth? Look at what those payments add up to at the end versus the price on the sticker right now. That's the easiest way to do it in your head. Total number of payments and amount of payments. Subtract that from what you see on the sticker. And that's what you're paying in interest. That's the cost of money in that deal, whatever deal that is. My deal with Harley, your deal with a Chrysler or a Jeep, a BMW, I don't care what it is. Cost of money is important to consider. It must be considered. Unless you're just someone that wants to waste their money, doesn't care. I have a client. I actually want him to come on the show. He's been a client for, 3 years or something. And when he came to us, he heard the show. He drives a limo. And he's a good guy. He's just, he's one of those guys that when he came to us, he just wanted to bury his head in the sand. Came to us, I never really asked him about this, but he came to us kind of begrudgingly, like, I know I need this, but I'm hesitant to do it. Tell me why I need you. And he had no credit file. There were some things that were negative on his credit, I guess, when he started. But he was a guy that wanted to live under the radar. Score in the low 500s, I think. By the way, his score's now like 800 plus. And, when I had this conversation with him a couple weeks ago when we closed his file out for him, he said, you took me from having no interest in doing this to actually being a homeowner. And, a lot of people are just comfortable saying, I don't need credit. I don't want credit. It doesn't matter. And then, his girl had a baby and, maybe he got married and he realized I need to buy a house and, I needed to get out of the places I was living, whatever it was. But he went from being in the 500s to having an 800 credit score, to being able to apply for credit and know he was going to get approved. To me, those are the stories when we do that for someone that make me feel good. It's why I do this. I was on that show, Sister Wives. It's the show about Cody and all 4 of his wives. I think he's got 3 now. But, they had a situation when they were here in Vegas where Robin, who was the younger wife, had a credit issue, and they were all trying to get houses in a cul-de-sac way up in the Northwest. I was there when they did their, ceremony, their kind of marriage-ish ceremony, way up in the Northwest somewhere, maybe even near Aliante or something. Somewhere, I'm in Henderson, so I look at that as the other side of the planet. I look at that like you need a passport to get there. But, we did a bunch of work for Robin on her credit. I ended up on that show. And I remember a couple years after that was done, getting an invitation in the mail to that wedding ceremony. And I called Robin or Cody and just said, hey, listen, I appreciate this, but I feel funny. I don't know that I necessarily belong, and, it's in the backyard, and, this is, and she said to me, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't have this house. And so, I look at statements like that, and that never made it on the show, obviously. That was, years later. Or what this gentleman whose story I just shared with you that's now an 800 credit score. And we have a lot of them. We have a ton of those stories. But I look at those stories and I think this is why I do this. So that we can help people. Listen, bad things happen to good people all the time. I know that so well. We all know people who are lovely people. And stuff just happens and continues to happen. And it's heartbreaking. But when people that have had bad things that are good people come to me, and I have those stories, I go, this is it. This is one of those times where I sit back or I go smoke a cigar and think, I'm going to take a beat and think about what we were able to do for this person. By the way, you've got to be willing to come along for the ride. Right? Robin was willing to come along for the ride. Cody and Robin together were willing to come along for the ride. The gentleman I told you about that drives the limo that was off the grid and ended up needing a place and is, they had a baby and he had to be willing to come along for the ride. That's part of it. You've got to be active. Here's a thing for you. You've got to be present for this. I can't just do it alone. In many cases we can, but by and large, you have to be there and be ready. Ready to say, okay, I'll do what needs to be done. And especially in both of these cases, those people needed to do what was needed to be done. In the case of the limo driver, he had collections that needed to be dealt with. It was like a bad country song. If it wasn't for bad credit, I'd have no credit. So we rebuilt. That's all. But you got to be willing to take that first step. That's important. That's why you call us. That's why you reach out to us on the internet. By the way, the phone number, and I'll give you all this information at the end of the show. But just if you heard that rant and you think, you know what, I think I'm ready, just call us. 702-778-2000. Text the word credit. Buddy of mine, retired cop friend of mine, I see him a lot. We both have the same vice, which is, again, cigar smoking. Reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, hey, I got a credit problem. By the way, this is a guy with an 800 credit score. He said, I got this bill that showed up out of the blue on the credit card, or on the credit report. And I said, tell me what it is, what happened. And it's an old AT&T bill. No idea that it was sent to collection. He was never notified, et cetera, et cetera. It's a common theme. When collection agencies pick up accounts, they're not required under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act to reach out to you and say, we've got this collection. Would you like to pay it, or should we just drop it on your credit report? They don't have to do that. Often these agencies will let the credit report collect the money for them. And when I say that, I mean they're going to just put it on your report and let it sit there until you pull your credit and realize, oh, goodness, I have this issue on my credit. What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to pay it. So the issue here with this buddy of mine is that knocked it was 125 points. He knew what his credit score was before because he watched it. And then he said it was 125 points. I think his credit score was like 810 or 815. He thought he closed his account out, never got an additional bill, and it just showed up. He's the guy who would have paid it. By the way, when those things happen, it's always best to pay the bill and then go back and fight it after the fact. People that want to argue it out of principle end up in a position where they lose 100 plus points on their credit out of principle because they don't think they owe the money. By the way, in this case, my buddy's collection, which cost him 125 points, was less than that in dollars. It was $110, not even $125. It wasn't even $1 per point. Right? It was less than that. $110, and it cost him 125 points. The problem with this is that AT&T and Verizon, T-Mobile as well, when they send their accounts to collection, those collection agencies do not remove those accounts even when they're paid from your credit report. We do have a strategy to help you with that. By the way, if you've got one of those issues with a cell company, we can help you get that removed from your credit report. But you got to pick up the phone. You got to say, hey, listen, I need some help. And that's my final thought on the show today. If you need the help, if you need our assistance, pick up the phone or get on the computer and get to our website, crnevada.com. Make an appointment, get your credit report that way, or pick up the phone and call us at 702-778-2000, 702-778-2000. Call us or text the word credit. This is The Credit Show on KNON.